Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel and Happy New Year. Let's get this year started off with a little modeling video, shall we? So the idea for this video came from another artist on YouTube here. He goes by the name of Polygon Pen. He's a great hard surface modeler and a Cinema 4D artist. I'm going to put a link to his channel in the description. I highly recommend you go check him out and consider subscribing. He's working on a series right now where he's doing a lot of industrial design models. And this particular asset caught my attention recently because of the use of radial symmetry tools in C4D, tools that we don't have in Blender. And I use paid add-ons every day in my workflow, but I specifically chose not to for this, just so I can demonstrate how it can be done using only tools that ship with Blender natively. So jump in here and let's get it done. All right, guys, so here we go. So I've got my template laid out here, and I will make this template available for anyone that wants to grab it and follow along. Please do. Have fun. So here it is. Now, I first need to plan out kind of how many sections I'm going to need. I can see if you ignore this kind of etched in path here, there's 5 identical segments here. Right? So just a little bit of planning goes a long way. So I'm going to grab grease pencil here and kind of just make some notes. So I know, oops, the obvious. I've got 5 of these cutouts here. I'm not worried about this inside yet, but just note that there are 5 cutout holes here too. And then I can just see, okay, this is going to divide like so. I've got these 5 even segments. That'll be arrayed. Okay, cool. Now, I also need some geometry here. So I know I can do this in 4 additional segments. Okay, so my starting point is really simple now, right? Some basic math tells me that I've got 5 segments with 4 subsegments, which equals 20. So I know I now need a cylinder or a circle that has 20 vertices. That's my starting point. So let's go ahead and get rid of this grease pencil stuff. Okay, now I'm going to use a circle, but feel free to use whatever floats your boat. So I'm going to make sure my vertices are set to 20, which they are. Okay, I'm going to use a fill type of triangle fan, and I'm going to change my align from world to view. Cool. From here, I'm just going to scale this up. I'm going to turn on X-ray mode so I can see, scale it up to just outside of that cutout there and just set the rotation and scale. Cool. Now I can look in here, X-ray mode on again, and I can pick out these 4 segments that I knew I was going to need. That's all I need. So I'll hit Control-I to invert the selection, X, and then delete faces. So this is all I need right here, these 4 segments, right? These 4 segments are repeated. Okay, so now when I look a little bit deeper into this, I can see that ignoring this etched part here, this is identical from this side to this side. So technically all I really need are these 2 faces here, right? And you'll see why in a second. I'm going to jump into edge mode. I'm going to grab these 3 edges and I'm just going to right click, subdivide. And I'm going to subdivide this 2 times. I'm going to start by grabbing this bottom edge by just alt clicking, and I'm going to double tap G because I want to slide this down. And I'm going to bring it right down here to what will become this hub or the center of the rim here. Do the same thing with this edge. So alt click, double tap G, and bring this one down to what will become the opposite edge of this kind of cutout indentation part here. From here, I want 4 loop cuts. So Control R and just scroll up 4, and then I'm just going to snap this right into the center. Cool. And then lastly, I need 1 more loop cut here to form what will become the edge of this cutout piece here. So just 1 more Control R right along here, move this up into position about there. Cool. From here, I want these vertices here to form this vertical edge right along this cutout here. Okay, so how do I do that? In native Blender, I'm just going to hit S for scale, X for the axis I want to align them on. Okay, I'm going to change my pivot to median point. So S, X, right? And you can see what's happening as I move the cursor here. They're lining up, right? Well, while I'm doing this, I can just hit 0 on the numpad, and then that will line them up. And I can just move them over on X, and then there we go. All right. Now from here, I will S and Z. So I'm scaling this on Z just very slightly. Now I want this edge here to start forming the bottom edge of this cutout. So I'll take this vertex here, double tap G, and just slide it down like here. Okay. From here, I don't need these verts. So I'm going to select them, X, delete vertices. Here we go. Okay. Save your work because you know. Now, how do I get this piece to then form the rest of these shapes here with a ring? Well, this is how we're going to do it. I'm going to take this shape here, and we're going to apply a mirror. So generate mirror. And now we've got this. Essentially what I've done is created the space in between these two cutouts. And you can probably see where this is going already. So let's go ahead and add an empty. Okay, now I'm going to name this empty. And we're going to use this empty a lot, over and over and over again. So it's helpful. Do what you want. It's fine. All right, so I've labeled that. Now I want to go into this mesh here. I'm going to minimize the mirror modifier, and I'm going to add another one. I'm going to add the generate array. Okay, now it's doing what an array modifier should be doing. I'm going to change my count from 2 to 5. Okay, so far so good. That's not really what I wanted to do, right? So I'm going to turn off relative offset, and I'm going to turn on object offset. I'm going to open that up. I'm also going to select merge and open that up and make sure I choose first and last copies. This is important because when we array this, we need the last instance of our array to merge with the first instance of our array. So make sure that those are checked. Now I'm going to take my rotator empty here, drag it into the object window there. Now, when I rotate this empty now, cool beans, right? I'm now seeing my instances rotate around. Now, for some reason, yours is not rotating. If you're rotating your empty and only the empty is rotating, select the mesh, Control A, and apply all transforms, and that will resolve that problem for you. So if I divide 360 by 5, I get 72, specifically degrees, right? So I need to rotate this 72 degrees. Let me get rid of this. So now if I go into my empty here and I hit R for rotate and then 72 on the numpad, boom, there we go. It's perfect. Okay. Lastly, I'm going to give this a sub D modifier with a control 1. We don't need any more density than that right now. So just a control 1 will do it. Let me turn on my wireframe. Okay. And I know that I'm using add-ons to turn that stuff on, but you can quickly just do it right up here. So not that big of a deal. Okay. So now let's take a look at this for a second because something is kind of wonky and we have to address it right away. Take a look at this edge flow right here. Okay. This edge flow is not good. We don't want this. And I'm not really worried about the N-gon right here. In fact, if I turn off optimal display, we can see we're working with quads. That's not the issue. The issue is this pole right here. This is going to cause us problems. We don't want that. Poles on flat areas that are not being distorted or on edges, totally fine. But on edges, we don't want it. We want this edge here in this middle to follow the curvature of this cutout, right? We want it to go around. And right now it's not doing that. So how do we get it to do that? This is how. I'm going to turn off my subdivision in the edit view. So it looks like this. I'm going to grab this edge here and I'm going to Control X and get rid of it. And I know what you're thinking. I just created an N-gon deliberately, and that's okay because check it out. With the sub D modifier adding the extra geometry that we need, it properly subdivided that N-gon in the exact way we need it to. So now that edge flows right around this corner, and that's exactly what we want. Okay, cool. Now, before we move on any further, there's one thing I need to do, and I'm going to turn on my sub D modifier so it's available in all views. And then I want to take this edge here, and I'm just going to increase, turn on my X-ray mode so I can see what's going on. See this edge right here? I want this edge here to be aligned with the top edge of this cutout, which happens to be this etched area right here. So I'm going to switch my pivot point with period on the keyboard to 3D cursor, which is that world origin. And I'm just going to move this, or just scale it, sorry, just S for scale, and just scale it up until we get to about there. And you can see, let me zoom in a little bit, that now this edge is following that outer curve right here. Don't worry about this. You can see it gets kind of funky right here. We're going to fix that later, but we just wanted that initial edge to be right where it is now. Cool. Save your work. From here, Okay, I don't need the mirror, array, or sub-D modifiers anymore. So I'm going to apply all of them. And this is what I've got. Cool. Now, from this point, I need this rim shape to actually start having like a curvature to it, right? Like a spherical curvature, not being so flat. Now, the best way I figured that I can do that in Blender was as follows. First things first, I'm going to take this circle and I'm going to rename it to rim, and I'm going to hide it. Now, I'm just going to add a UV sphere. And I want this to be dense, all right? So 64 segments, 32 rings, awesome. Let's go ahead and change the alignment from world to view and then scale this thing up like so. Let's look at it from the side now. I'm going to apply the rotation and scale. Now, I don't need the whole sphere. I just need this front bit, like maybe like this, right? So I'm going to select just those in X-ray mode so I get all of them, including on the other side. Control I, X, delete vertices, okay? I'm going to then set my origin to geometry and then Alt G to move it back to world origin. Let's look at it in the front again. I'm going to turn on my X-ray mode again, and now I'm just going to scale this up to be the size of the rim in the template, maybe even slightly bigger. From here, apply the scale, and let's get out of X-ray mode. Now, this is pretty dense, but it's not as dense as I need it to be. So I'm going to give this a sub-D modifier with a level of 2. So Control 2. Okay. If I turn off optimal display here, we'll see what that's done. And that's exactly what I want. Now, there is one thing I need to change. The curvature of this plate we just made here is a little too steep for the rim that I'm making, in my opinion. So what I want to do here is just look at this from the side, and I'm just going to flatten this a little bit. So just S for scale, Y, and I'm just going to bring it in maybe about that much, okay? And then just apply the scale, okay? That's better. It's not as intense of a spherical curve, right? I think that's going to work better. Okay, from here, let's name this. I'm going to call this one Rim Wrap. Now you can probably figure out where I'm going with this. Let's hide this and turn our rim back on. Now, let's get this rim shape to follow the shape of the little plate we made. Okay, so I'm going to grab this. I'm going to go to Deform, Shrink Wrap, and I'm going to drag my rim wrap mesh into the target object. Okay, cool. That did it. Awesome. Right now, when you're looking at the center of this rim, I hope you can see it with the YouTube compression, but look at the center of the rim and look at the 3D cursor, which is at world origin. They look aligned, right? They look like they're good to go. But if I zoom into this really far, check this out. Okay. I'm going to get my little grease pencil here. This is the center of the rim. This is world origin. They're not aligned. They look aligned from that viewing distance, but in reality, they're not. And we need to fix this now, or it'll cause us major headaches in a few minutes. So the way we're going to fix this is just by changing the wrap method in our shrink wrap from nearest surface point to project. Now, when I do this, watch what happens. Boom. Now, both the center of the rim and the 3D cursor at world origin are perfectly aligned. And you can zoom in until Blender basically crashes and it will be lined up. And that's what we want. Cool. So that's fixed. Now let me zoom out. Okay. Because again, you couldn't tell from this distance. The other thing we need to address is, I'm going to turn off shrink wrap just for a quick second, are these edge loops here. So this one here, we don't really care about. That one can be a little bit warped and distorted, but this one, we need it to be a perfect circle. If you haven't already, you're going to turn on a tool that ships with Blender, right? It comes with Blender. It's just not turned on by default, which doesn't make any sense. It should be turned on, just like things like Node Wrangler and Bool Tool and stuff like that. But you got to go turn it on if you haven't already. So jump into your preferences, go into your extensions or add-ons, depending on what version of Blender you're using, and turn on Loop Tools. Once that's on, right-click on this, Loop Tools, Circle. Okay, and we're going to Doesn't matter. Flat can stay on. Okay. And we're going to recircularize that. We're going to do the same thing here. And this one I don't really care about, but for good measure, we'll just do it anyway. Okay. Now I'm going to turn on my shrink wrap again. And then these are back to being perfect circles. Okay, cool. So here we go. But now look what's going on. Look at the shape, right? It doesn't quite have the complete rounded shape. Well, all we need to do to fix that is grab the rim and just move it forward or back just until it completely takes the complete shape again. And there it is. Let me turn off my wireframe and let me turn on Shade Smooth. And there it is. There is our rim shape with that nice spherical curvature in it. Okay. From here, I don't need the shrink wrap modifier anymore, so I'm going to apply it. I'm also going to give this one level of subdivision with a control 1. Let me turn on my wireframe so you can see what that looks like. Okay, cool. There it is. That's most of the hard part done already. Okay, everything we do from here on out is basically going to be a rinse and repeat of everything we've done so far. Okay, a couple minor exceptions, but for the most part, it's going to be pretty much the same exact workflow. So let's jump back in here and take a look at where we're at and where we need to be. So I'm going to go into my X-ray mode, and I can see, well, I've got this cut out here and these circles here. I'm going to do these near the end. I'm not really worried about this right now. Let's focus on these big cutouts here. The way I'm going to do this is I don't want to have to do this 5 times. I only want to do this once. So I'm going to grab this center edge here, and I'm going to grab this edge here, which is the center of these 2 pieces, right? Okay. And then with my mouse cursor over the area that I want to keep, I'm just going to hit V as in Victor. Okay. And just split those edges. Now with my mouse cursor over the area I want to eliminate, I'm going to hit L for Lima. And then I'm going to hit X, delete faces. So this is what I have left. Right? Now I'll just go into here and yep, you guessed it, another array modifier. Turn off relative. Same thing we did before. Turn on object. Make sure you select merge. Make sure you select first last copies. Change the count from 2 to 5. And then grab your rotator empty and drag it right into the object window. Boom. Okay. Now let's move the array above the sub D. Right. Cool. Looking good. But what are all these gaps? You might be thinking to yourself, wait a minute. I have all the merging turned on. What's causing these gaps? Check this out. I'm going to rotate my viewport here and look at that. That's what's causing the gaps, right? These pieces aren't aligned. So the way to fix that is to select the geometry, Control A, all transforms, just apply them. Ta-da! And we're rocking and rolling again. Okay. So now I have an array set up with this piece that now whatever I do here is going to be repeated 4 additional times. So I only have to work once. Okay. From here, I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to E to extrude, right click to snap it back, S to scale it down, and make sure that you're back in median point. So just period on the numpad, back into your pivot point, change it to median point, and then scale this down to something that seems reasonable. Okay. Back into loop tools. So right click on that edge, loop tools, circle. Okay. I'm going to turn on X-ray mode here, and I'm just going to line this up as kind of best I can here. Just kind of cool. Now there's a couple things I want to take note of, right? Look at this edge and look at how these edges here seem to be pulled really hard compared to these. All we need to do is rotate this. So just take the edge as it is and just rotate it. And we're just going to rotate it to where this looks a little bit more even all the way around. And it's kind of a tricky one. We might even be able to just move this a little bit to where it kind of, there we go. Okay. So something like that, right? Okay. So with that edge still selected now, G to move, Y, and just pull it back on the Y axis like so. Pull it back as much as you think it works for you. And if we look at it from the side, we can see that it's not straight. From the top down, we can see, right? This is not flat. From the side, we can see this is not flat. So we do the exact same thing we did before with regards to aligning vertices. So with the edge still selected, just S, this time Y, and while you're moving the cursor, 0 on the numpad, and that will align that edge on the Y-axis. Cool. And then from here, I'm just going to hit Y to extrude, or sorry, E to extrude, and then Y, and just bring that back like so. Okay, let me turn off my wireframe. We can see, and let me make one little adjustment to my, to my reference image here. Sorry, give me one quick second. Go into here, and let's turn this off on perspective. There we go. We don't need to see that in perspective, only when we're in the front view. Okay. Okay, cool. So here we go. Right, we've got this rim shape here, but it's kind of fluffy looking. It doesn't really have that nice clean sharpness to it. So let's add that before we move on. So I'm going to select this edge and this inner edge here. Actually, I take that back. Before I do that, just, you don't have to do this. One thing I did on mine is I'm going to add an edge right to the middle here, just a loop cut right in the middle, snap it to the middle, and then I'm just going to move this on Y just a little bit, and it just creates this little curvature in here, which gives it just a kind of a cool little swooping kind of design aesthetic, which I think is pretty cool. Okay, so now grab this edge, grab this inner edge here, and we're going to bevel these. So just Control B, and we want a 2-segment bevel like so. Now, while you're actively moving your cursor around, adjusting the width of your bevel, if you hit P on the keyboard, you'll change your profile. And we want the profile to be 1. So we're going to go all the way over. And then once we do that, back to A to kind of get the width of the bevel we want. And I'm going to go with something like this. Now, we can confirm here that when our menu pops up, we can see we got a 2-segment bevel. The shape is set to 1. That's what we want. But the one other thing I want to take note of, look at the thickness of the bevel here down at the bottom compared to the bevel up here at the top. The bevel up here is narrower than the bevel down here. Now, if we go into the menu settings here, the bevel settings, and we turn off loop slide, watch what happens to the bevel. You see that? I'll do it one more time. Loop slide on, loop slide off. With the loop slide off, the bevel is even. It's the same width all the way around, but these edges don't align. So let me show you here really quick. We're looking at this edge right here. With loop slide on, see how it forms like a continuous flow like this? With it off, it doesn't. But this is okay. This doesn't hurt us with our edge flow or shading. It's not going to cause us any problems, but it will ensure that our bevel is the same width all the way around. And that's, in this particular instance, that's more important. So let's go ahead and bring this out and take a look at it. And that's pretty cool now. Now we're getting that nice, clean, sharp edge from here, and we are ready to move forward. So back here, looking at front view, we can see, okay, so now the next piece would be this center kind of cut out here with these holes here. So to do this, I don't really want to work with the 1 segment. I want to work with the rim as a whole. So I don't need the array modifier anymore. So I'm going to go into my stack and I'm just going to apply. By the way, when you're applying, if you don't already know this, when you're applying a modifier, you can click on this little triangle and go to apply, or with your cursor over the modifier you want to apply, just hit Control A and that will apply your modifier. Cool. From here, I want to work on this part. Now, luckily for us, not really lucky, we kind of did that on purpose, right? We've got a loop going right through the center of this, right where this is going to dip in and right to the center of all these circles. So what I'm going to do here is just G to move Y, and I'm just going to slide this back on the Y-axis like so. Okay, and you just do it as much as you like. Okay, I'm not going to worry about these edges being sharpened up just yet. I just want to build this shape out where these are going to go. From here, from here, I'm going to bevel this. So Control B, I'm going to give it a 2-segment bevel somewhere in this kind of range here. Let's take a look at this. Okay, I think that works. I'm going to turn on wireframe here just to get an idea of where things are at. Okay. Now, let's take a note here. If I zoom in, let's take a look at one of these circles. So I can see as I look around here, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 vertices that kind of border this circle. I don't care about the one in the center, but just the ones that border it, right? And it's like that for all of them. Okay. So I think we could use, turn on wire X-ray, that we can just use an 8-sided cylinder for this. So let's grab a cylinder, change its vert count from 32 or whatever it is to 8. And we're going to change the world, the align from world to view. And we can leave the cap fill type as end gone. Okay. Now I'm just going to move this into position. Zoom into my template here. Now you can see in the template that it's not a straight cut from this edge. There's like a bit of a chamfer and then it cuts in. So let's just align this to the outside circle, somewhere like around there, right? And you can move this however you need. Just only move it up and down and then scale it. Cool. I'm going to scale it on Y just to get some more breathing room, and I'm going to apply the location and scale. Sorry, rotation and scale. All right, cool. So I've got this cut out now. Now, really quickly, before I do anything else, let's go into wireframe and just take a look at kind of where things are lining up. There's a couple things I want to note here. First and foremost, the center edge here, I want this to be as closely aligned to the center edge in this indentation as possible. And it's pretty dang close right now. Now, the other things that I need to take into consideration are these edges here. So we are going to Boolean this cylinder out of this rim, which means we're going to have some cleanup to do, right? So in order to facilitate that cleanup in the best way possible, we need to kind of plan ahead. Where is this going to cut this, and where are these new verts going to go? So I know that this edge here, if we double tap G this, it's outside the range of this cylinder, and that's okay. This one here is just inside. Now I could leave it there and just clean it up after, but it might just be easier just to double tap G and just move it just outside of that cylinder space there. Okay, with that being done, I'm going to grab this cylinder, Control A, and apply all transforms. As previously mentioned, this will move its origin point to world origin, right? And that's what we want. From here, I'm just going to give this an array modifier, right? Generate array. And just like before, we don't want relative. We just want object. We don't need to merge it this time, and set the count from 2 to 5, and then grab our rotator empty and, oops, I should open it first, and drag it into the object. Boom. Now I've got my 5 cylinders. And if I look at this in X-ray mode, everything's lined up. It's exactly where they need to be. And we are good to go. So now let's go ahead and cut some holes. So I'm going to take this right here. Now, again, just like I mentioned before, there's several tools that ship with Blender that are not turned on by default. One of them is its Boolean operation tools. So go into your settings, into your extensions or add-ons, again, depending on what version of Blender you're using, and turn on the Bool tool. It should be on by default, but it isn't. Again, I don't know why, but turn that on. I happen to use hard ops, but the key command, I believe, is the same. If we're going to do it with a key command, right? I'm going to grab my cylinders, I'm going to grab my rim, and I'm going to hit Control minus, and that's going to cut holes. Now you can see, don't worry about the density of the geometry here. I'm just going to move that Boolean above the subdivision, and there we go. That's better. So now I'm just going to hide this cutter collection that gets made here. Okay, I've got these holes cut out now. Okay, now I'm going to apply the Boolean modifier, and then let's take a look at this because, yep, we've got to do some cleanup, right? You can see we've got double verts, we've got things that aren't lined up, and that's to be expected. That's okay. That was just the result of Booleaning, is that a word? Booleaning the cylinder from the rim. But I only want to do this one time. I don't want to do this 5 times. So once again, I'm going to grab these center edge here and this edge here. And just like before, V to rip them, L to select them, X to delete them. Okay, and then I'm back to here. And before I do anything else, I'm just going to do a little bit of cleanup right here. So when you're doing cleanup like this, you want to favor the cutout. In this case, I want to favor the cutout that I made here. So I'm going to move these vertices, which shouldn't be here, to those. Does that make sense? Because this right here is the cutout. Now, the way you're going to do this in Native Blender is select the vertex you want to move, then select the vertex you want to merge it to, right? Then hit M for merge and choose at last. Okay. Now I'm using a paid add-on, so mine is just mapped to 1, but it's the same exact thing. Okay. Do the same thing here. So again, the first one you want to move, the second one is the one you want to merge to, M at last. And then we clean that up. Okay, cool. Almost done. Now, this n-gon here, I'm not too worried about it because the sub-D modifier will actually correct it. But, especially if you look at it like this, right? So see, it did correct it. But this polygon here is stressed and it will cause a bit of a shading issue. So we're just going to quickly rectify that by giving this a support edge right through here, like so. I'm just going to put those in. Now, the way you're going to merge, or not, sorry, the way you're going to connect two vertices in Native Blender is select one, select the other one, hit J. You're going to connect these, okay? Just like so. Now, if I look at this again, right, it's still corrected, right? But it's less, there's less tension on that polygon here, and you get a much cleaner shading and a cleaner edge flow. Cool. Our cleanup work is done. That's all we have to do. So now we'll do the same thing as we've done already several times. Generate array 2 goes to 5, no relative, object, merge, yada, 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 rotator, bing, move this above the subdivision, voila. Okay. Again, same exact workflow over and over and over again with the same rotator empty. And here we go. So now I've got these pieces cut out and everything's looking really good. So from here, just like before, I don't need the array modifier. So I'm going to go ahead and apply it. Now I'm going to come in here and I want to create this chamfered area here, right? So first thing I'm going to do is just grab these edges that form these circles like so. I'm going to switch my pivot by hitting period on the keyboard, switching to individual origins. Now I'm going to hit E to extrude, snap it back with a right click, and then S to scale. And then scale this in. If you want to look at the template, right, we can kind of, something like that works. Okay. Now, while that's still selected, okay, you're going to hit G to move and then Y and just move it back a little bit. Okay. Not too far, just enough to give it that chamfered kind of look. Okay. From here, while those are still selected, E to extrude, Y, and just extrude them back. And if we look at it from the back side here, just like before, S to scale, Y the axis, 0 on the numpad, and we've just straightened them all out. Okay, cool. Let me turn off my wireframe here. All right, so we're not quite getting the chamfered look yet, but the way we solve that is just by selecting these edges now. Okay, I'm going to zoom in here pretty tight, and we're going to Control B to give this a small 2-segment bevel, maybe something like that. And then now check it out. Now we've got this nice chamfered look. Okay, if I need more, resolution out of this, I can switch from 1 to 2 on the subdivision, and look at that. That's cool. And that's essentially it, right? Everything from this point is super straightforward and really simple. We're done with any kind of radial symmetry or arrays at this point. I will make one last little change here. I want to sharpen up these edges, but I also don't want this kind of star thing here. So what I'm going to do first is I want these edges to be the exact same bevel. So what I'm going to do is, yeah, we don't even need this. I'm going to grab this and just bevel these together like so. Okay. So now I've got this nice sharpened edge around here. And then this piece here, I'm just going to get rid of this whole thing, including these surrounding faces, by just deleting the vertices. And that's going to delete the whole inside. From here, I'm going to grab that inside edge, E to extrude, snap it back with a right click, S to scale, and then just scale it in, Control F, and then grid fill, and then I'm going to move my offset until this is straight up and down across the center like so. And now I just have this. So now I'm not working with some weird, kind of triangle fan in the center of this. Not like that's a big deal. If it's not causing you problems, it's not causing you problems. But this way I've got all, quads straight through and everything is clean and nothing looks weird. And that's it, right? That's the whole difficult part of this particular asset. Everything else from here is straightforward. So for example, if you wanted to add the little lip that's on the outside of the rim here, what you can do is just grab this outer edge. I'm going to turn on X-ray mode. Grab this outer edge. Either turn this on to median point or 3D cursor, whatever you want. And then all I'm going to do is just E to extrude and then snap it back and then scale this up just about like so. Then I'm going to grab this loop of polys right there and just Alt E to extrude along normals and just bring it out just a tad like so. Right? And then I'll grab this back edge, maybe move it out on Y just a little bit, maybe even scale it down a little bit, and then E to extrude, S to scale, something like this, and then maybe E to extrude, Y. Now I'm not looking at the reference for an actual rim, so I don't know exactly how this should look. So if you're modeling a real car rim, obviously get references for how it looks on the other side too. That doesn't really concern me at this point. So there it is, right? There's our rim. And if this needed to be like a tighter edge, I mean, you could just bevel this and you get something, whatever works. I actually like this way better, but that's just kind of where I'm at with this. Maybe just one. Nope. I don't like that at all. Maybe something like that. Yeah. Obviously, you do whatever homework you need to do on what that needs to look like on the back end. And that's it. Now, for extra credit, if you wanted to put that edge, the kind of the etched out separator kind of thing in there, the geometry is already done for us if you wanted to do that. I mean, by all means, you could do your own design or you can just leave it like this. I mean, that still looks pretty cool. But this is how you would do the inside part. Okay, we can see here that for the most part, this geometry is already here. Well, you can just tweak it a little bit. So check this out. I'm going to just hide this geometry here because I don't want it to distract me in X-ray mode. So just hide that. Go back here. Okay, now check this out. All I need to do is take these verts, they're already here, and just align them into this groove. Now I'll do the first few and then I'm going to fast forward this because otherwise it'll just bore the pants off people. You could do more than one at a time. Just double tap G and we're just going to move these points into these areas. On a corner like this, what I do is I just move along every single edge I can until I get it to where I want it. So I might start this way, this way, this way, right? And just get it to the position I want. And then I'm just going to go around and just rinse and repeat this for all of the vertices that need to be in place, including these, right? These are those ones earlier that were not lined up right. So that's it. I'm just going to go around now and do this, and I'll fast forward this so I don't bore the bejesus out of people. Okay, so all that's done. I've moved all these vertices around where they needed to go. And now all I need to do is select the edge here. Okay, just go through the whole thing and select the edge from all those verts that were, repositioned. And here we go. Okay. Now from here, all I need to do is Control B, give it a 2-segment bevel, make it as kind of narrow as you want. And again, I'm going to leave loop slide off here. Let's make it a little bit bigger. Maybe something like that. Or maybe, let's see. Oops, nope. something like that. Okay. And then once that's done, okay, just Control minus, and that selects, might be kind of hard to see, that selects the inside or the original edge. From there, I'm just going to G, Y, and just move that back on the Y axis. Okay, now here's the fun part. From here, with that edge still selected, I'm going to Control plus, and that's going to select the whole thing again, but I don't want the whole thing. So the first thing I'm going to do is in edge mode, I'm going to Alt Shift click on that center edge, and that's going to deselect it. Okay. Now I've got these perpendicular edges that go across that center edge. I don't want these either. And the way we're going to deselect these is Control Shift Alt clicking on one side. That takes care of all those, and then doing the exact same thing. So Control Shift Alt on the other one. Now the only thing I'm left with now are the two bordering edges that were created with the bevel. Okay, from here, Control B to bevel, and then a small 2-segment bevel like so. Now I've got that center piece, carved in. When you're in edit mode, go ahead and Alt H to bring everything back, and there it is. Okay, there's the extra credit portion of this, and I hope that was helpful. And just like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, go check out the channel for Polygon Pen and consider subscribing to his channel. If you liked what you saw here, consider subscribing also to my channel, and I'll see you in the next video.